In this movie, we're going to look at designing smart art. We'll first talk about the different categories of smart art. We're going to create some smart art, move it, resize it, delete it, and copy it. Then we're going to talk about some keyboard controls and the Create Graphic group on the Design tab. We'll talk about the text pane, and then we'll look at the other command groups on the Design tab. I've got a worksheet set up with some information about smart art, beginning with a list of the different groups of smart art. There's 129 different smart art graphics to choose from, grouped into 8 categories, and 30 of these can actually contain images or pictures. To get to the smart art, you go to the Insert tab, left-click Smart Art, and we get the Choose a Smart Art Graphic dialog box. The first choice lists all of the smart art, and you can scroll through to select one, or you can choose one from the groupings, the first of which is List. A list is a sequence of non-sequential information, which sounds a little bit ironic, but it's different than a process, which is a sequence of steps, which is different than a cycle, which is a series of steps that repeat, and then there's the hierarchy, the most common example of which is the organization chart, but there's decision trees and other hierarchical relationships that can be graphically depicted. There are relationships that exist between the components, and this is an array of graphics that are actually in the other groups for the most part. There's a matrix that shows 4 quadrants and how these components relate to the entire whole. There's a pyramid group, self-explanatory, we've seen those before. And there's a picture group that allows you to create a gallery of pictures and add text to those pictures. And Office.com has sort of an array, a selection of graphics that are available in the other groups. So to set up some smart art, you can left-click it and left-click OK. And when you left-click it, you get some information in the lower right-hand quadrant of this dialog box about the smart art, or you could double-click the smart art, and Excel will put the smart art basically in the middle of the worksheet, and open up the contextually driven tabs, the Design and Format tab, which is the smart art tools. And by default, the cursor will be blinking in the text pane, allowing you to enter text into the first shape. So since Excel kind of plops this thing in the middle of the worksheet, we're going to have to move it. And to do that, you select the edge, and you need to make sure you select the edge rather than a shape. So I'm going to go back and select the edge again. I get my 4-sided arrow. When I left-click and grab the graphic, I can drag it to a new location and release and plop it there. We are also invariably going to resize the thing, and to do that, you grab an edge till you get the 2-sided arrow. It's a little bit difficult to do that. Left-click and grab the edge, and then you can resize it in however way you see fit. And if you ever find the need to copy one of these graphics, left-click and select the edge, and then execute whatever copying steps that you usually use to copy anything. Control-C, select a location, Control-V. I'm going to press Control-Z to undo that. Select the graphic. I can hold the Control key down and the left mouse button and drag to a new location to create a copy. I'm going to Control-Z to undo that. So the last thing you may want to do is actually delete the darn thing, and to do that, again, select the frame and press delete. So I'm going to set up a new graphic by going to Insert, Smart Art. I'm going to go to Hierarchy and select the hierarchical list. Left-click OK, and I'm going to grab it and move it because it's not exactly where I want it to be. So you've got your graphic set up. There's a number of different things that we're going to do when we are working with smart art, and they include adding text to the shapes. And when I do that, notice how the text in the boxes on the level that I'm working in resize accordingly. And that's to maintain a uniform look. And that'll happen with all the text boxes in any given level you're working in. To get to the text in the other boxes, you can use the down arrow to go down and the up arrow to go up. To add a shape, and I'm going to go back up to the top level, you can either use the keyboard or go into the Create Graphic group on the Design tab and left-click Add a Shape, where you can add a shape after or before or below, but it's probably easier just to use the keyboard, because when I press enter on any given level that I'm on, I'll add a shape. So I added a shape to level 1, so I can go down to level 2 and press enter and add a shape below the selected shape on level 2. To delete a shape, you need to select it, and actually when you create it, it's already selected, and press delete. The other thing that we can do is after we add some text on the top line is to add a bullet point, which allows us to add even more text and organize that text within the shape. So we can add and delete shapes, we can add bullet points, and we can also promote an item of text in one of two ways. We can use the Shift-Tab key, or we can use the Promote command button in the Create Graphic group on the Design tab. When I left-click Promote, that item that was a bullet point moves up a level to become the main text in that shape. Promote again, it actually moves up to another level, to the first level from the second level. Demoting moves the text item back down the other direction. The other thing that we can do, and I'm going to select the item above, is to move the text up and down within the same level. Instead of going up and down a level, we can move this box's text that says Add Text up to the box above it. And when you're moving up and down, you can only move up and down on that level. If I want to go up to the next level, of course, that would be promoting the text. Another command button on the Create Graphic group is to reorient the graphic from right to left or from left to right. And all this does is flip-flop the orientation of the sequencing of the graphic items, and every time I left-click that, it just takes it the other direction. So we've been working out of the text pane, which is displayed by default, aligned to the left side of the graphic. But we can move that if we want to. We can close it and have it so it doesn't display. Open it up again by left-clicking these arrows. We can turn it off by left-clicking the text pane command button. And when we turn it off for all graphic items, not for just the one that we are working in. And when we turn it on, we also turn it on for all graphic items. So I added some text to my second and third box on the first level for a reason that you'll find out in a second. And we're going to move to the Layouts group on the Design tab, where by left-clicking this down arrow, I can select a different graphic from the group that I selected my original graphic from and change to that other style. I can also, after left-clicking the drop-down, go to More Layouts, where I get to choose a Smartart Graphic dialog box, choose another item in another group. The thing you have to be careful about, though, is some of these graphic items don't allow you to add shapes. And when their number of shapes is fixed, and you go from a graphic that has, in this case, 3 on the top level, to a graphic that only allows for 2 shapes, I'm going to left-click OK, you'll lose the text, at least temporarily, on that third shape. And in the text pane, we get an error. Anything above marked with an X will not appear in the Smartart graphic and will not be saved. That is true. I can still go to another graphic that allows for the display of that text with 3 or more shapes, and I'm fine. But once I close and save this workbook and open it up again, I will lose the text that's associated with that third shape. So back to our original graphic, we can also change the color, which is pretty self-explanatory, and we get a preview, which is pretty nice, so we know what it's going to look like before we left-click the choice. I'm going to go click off of that. We can also choose a style, which allows us to change the graphic in a way that makes some of the shapes look like buttons. And again, we get a preview. We can orient it in a sort of a 3-dimensional way. I'll left-click that. And if we decide that at some point we didn't like the color changes and or the style that we chose, we can reset the graphic to its original layout. And lastly, we can convert these boxes, which I've been calling shapes, to what actually are shapes that have their own bit of functionality by left-clicking this. And we're going to cover that in another movie. So that's an introduction to Smartart. We took a walk through the 8 different categories where we have 129 Smartart graphics to select from. We created one, we moved it, resized it, and deleted it. We used a combination of the keyboard and commands on the Create Graphic command group to add text, add a shape, add a bullet, promote and demote a text item, move that text item up and down the same level, and to reorient the graphic from left to right or from right to left. We then talked about the text pane, and we looked at the other command groups in the Design tab, the Layouts group, the Smartart Styles group, and the Reset group.